Hi, I decided to share how media literacy can help with body imaging. So, we know that social media can impact how we feel about ourselves, and especially in children, young adults, because we have a tendency to compare ourselves and define who we are. It helps us to create values and what we believe. This can be found in social media, magazines, television, lots of different places that we can find this. In the Canadian Teacher magazine, they interviewed children and they asked them if they believed that media influenced how they viewed their body, and they said yes. And they asked if they had ever tried to change how their body looked, and they said yes. So obviously, media can influence how we view our bodies. There are positive effects of social media. Psych.net, PsychCentral.net, they shared that social media is a platform for body positivity. Illinois State.edu said that viewing body positive content on social media platforms can help individuals become more accepting and appreciate their bodies. And they can connect with people in the community who can help them with those things. That kind of goes on to that there is social support. Psych.central talks about the community support and how that can help. You can get health and fitness inspiration. You can find people who can teach you how to become healthier, and also people who can help you accept, who you are and how your body is. From a study by Huang, social media can be a source of social support when people are trying to lose weight. So those are just examples of social support that comes from media. Negative effects. A study by Morrison says constant exposure can lead to comparison. We've already talked about that. And low self-esteem, and distorted perception of their physical self. In Psych Central, they kind of state the reason why. We have Photoshop filters that create a picture that is a normal picture that then becomes an unrealistic body image. And so when we see these things, we wonder why we don't look this way. Another thing is cyberbullying. Children, young adults are bullied all the time based on their appearance. I've seen this with my own child, who is very beautiful but has red hair, and so she, it wasn't her body image, but it's her image of how she perceives herself, and having red hair and how that affected her self-esteem. In promoting eating disorders, is another way that is a negative impact. Healthline did it talked about a study that was done in 2022 where they took children, and for 8 minutes showed them different images. So some of the kids saw natural things like animals and nature and stuff like that, and then others were shown eating things and being skinny and stuff like that, and how it impacted them. And regardless, it talked about that it did impact. So they took them from the very beginning, they asked them questions, and at the end they asked them questions. And after that was done, they concluded that regardless of what they saw, it impacted how they perceived themselves, and especially those who saw things that affected like their weight and stuff like that, that it promoted them to feel like they needed to adjust their eating and stuff like that. So that was an interesting study that was done. From ways that we can avoid negative body image. Illinois State.edu says take breaks, especially if you feel worse after using social media. And then back to that study I just talked about, avoid being on social media for hours. It talked for just 8 minutes that these kids viewed things that impacted them. And so they suggested no more than 2 hours a day being on social media. Additional ways to avoid negative body imaging from news, the Illinois State.edu. It says, examine who you're following on social media and unfollow people who don't make you feel good, and follow people who lift you up and promote body positivity. The last thing I want to kind of talk about is incorporate media literacy. That was one of the huge things that I found from the effects of media literacy training on self-esteem, is that it can impact how children, young adults feel about themselves when they are media literate. And that they did the study in 2015 about fifth graders, and when they were taught how to receive media and were educated on it, they had a higher self-esteem and body satisfaction in the long run. So from shoutout.uk.org, it talks about enabling them to, the benefit of media literacy enables them to evaluate the information that they are seeing. And from National Eating Disorder, it talks about that media literacy, being media literate, helps you understand the role that media plays in shaping society and beauty, health, appearance, and identifying how marketing works to persuade you to buy certain things, and recognize that there's bias and misinformation in the information, and to develop media messages that are positive and helpful, and apply critical thinking to a wide range of issues. So this is kind of the things that I gain from body imaging. These are my sources. Thanks.